And our first presentation will be given by Just Shift's own steel specialist and the writer of the report, Ninni Kähkönen. Welcome, Ninni.
Thank you, Assu. I will share my screen, just a second. Like that. Okay. Welcome to the webinar on my behalf as well. And I will share the findings of the Sustainable Steel Scoreboard 2026 analysis with you next. But first, I'd like to tell you a little background for it. The iron and steel industries are among the most greenhouse gas emissions intensive industries in the world, accounting for around 11% of global carbon dioxide emissions. At the same time, steel demand is expected to grow due to global megatrends such as urbanization and the green transition. However, shutting down dirty coal-fired blast furnaces and shifting to new technologies like green hydrogen, direct reduced iron making coupled with steel making in electric arc furnaces, and enhancing steel recycling through better scrap handling and closed-loop processes can turn the emissions curve downwards regardless of increasing demand. Clear demand signals for fossil-free steel are crucial to make this shift happen, and the Sustainable Steel Scoreboard assesses steel procuring companies' readiness to decarbonize their steel value chains. And in addition to set targets and report on progress regarding also other aspects of environmental sustainability, such as decreasing air pollution, conserving water, as well as eliminating deforestation and conversion of natural ecosystems. This is the fourth time the Sustainable Steel Scoreboard analysis is published, and the first time companies from Nordic countries other than Finland are included. We conducted a market analysis to support the company selection for the Nordic edition last summer, and 15 companies were chosen for the analysis based on criteria regarding their size by revenue and number of employees, as well as geographical reach, with a preference for global companies for the analysis to have global significance. The companies are all publicly traded to ensure that their reporting is comparable, following the same rules and regulations, most importantly, the EU Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. Sectors that, for instance, Agora Industry has assessed as potential for lead market creation for fossil-free steel, like the automotive, construction, whiteware, and shipping sectors were included. We also included renewable energy companies, an emerging sector for lead market creation for green steel, and finally, machinery, because it is a prominent sector in Finland and Sweden and uses considerable amounts of steel. All companies analyzed have science-based targets for climate action. We offered all companies a possibility to walk through the analysis in a meeting to review and comment the findings, and had very few fruitful discussions with 10 of them. 5 companies did not grab this opportunity: Sandvik, Vestas, Ørsted, Maersk, and Veidekke. We will nevertheless continue engaging with all these 15 companies. There are altogether 21 indicators in the analysis, 12 of them assessing general supply chain sustainability to provide a baseline for comparison, and 9 assessing steel supply chain sustainability, the latter of which is our main focus of attention. The indicators are grouped in 3 groups across both categories: disclosure with a single weight, target setting and progress weighted 1.5 times, and use of supply chain levers with a double weight. The weighting affects the scoring so that action speaks louder than words. The scoring is straightforward. The lower the percentage, the poorer the result. Achieving a 100 total score would mean that a company's supply chains are aligned with the Paris Agreement's 1.5-degree goal and also meet other environmental sustainability criteria, such as criteria related to air pollution control, water use reduction, and halting deforestation. The methodology is based on the Lead the Charge Network's leaderboard methodology for assessing the sustainability of electric vehicle makers. We have adopted the methodology partially, including only environmental sustainability in our analysis, and adapted the methodology to better fit our multi-sector approach. We are considering to include also social sustainability in future editions of the scoreboard and further widening the geographical scope of it. Feel free to contact us if you would like to partner with us in using the scoreboard tool in your geography. Okay, now to the results. Our hypothesis was that including companies from other Nordic countries than Finland would increase the results, as we knew based on our market analysis that, for instance, Swedish and Danish companies perform better in using supply chain levers, such as cooperating closely with their steel suppliers. This proved indeed to be the case, as the average total score increased by 12 percentage points from last year. However, all 5 companies that have been with us since the beginning improved their scores as well. The Swedish SKF, a global company producing solutions to reduce friction such as bearings, seals, and lubricants, is the leader of the scoreboard 2026 and will later provide us with their comments on the scoreboard. The middle group is led by Finnish Valmet, also a machinery company that improved its total score by 12 percentage points, the largest improvement among the 5 companies that have been with us since the beginning for 4 years ago. Laggards remain below 20%, among them Swedish Skanska, a global construction and infrastructure company with the poorest result at 13%. We were especially glad to notice that the steel supply chain sustainability category was the one that improved most, by 20 percentage points from a measly average of 3 to 23%. It is important to note, though, that this or any other average score for that matter is not directly comparable to last year's results, as the company selection has changed considerably. Here's an illustration of the total scores for 2026, including comparisons to previous years where applicable. The total scores span from Skanska's 13 to SKF's 49%. And another one where the general supply chain scores are illustrated, showing both quite even performance for the 10 best companies, as well as a different order compared with total and steel supply chain sustainability scores, the latter of which can be seen on the next slide. Metso leads with 34% and Electrolux lags with 18%. It is worth noting that the same companies are in the top 6 for both total and steel supply chain sustainability. SKF leads with 65%, Skanska is last with only 3%. No company scores 0, though, which was still the case last year. It seems that companies achieving the best total scores have realized that they need to address their steel supply chains to reach their sustainability goals, whereas others still wrestle with sustainability on a more general level, receiving better scores in the general supply chain sustainability category. Country-wise, Denmark takes the lead both in average total score at 28% and steel supply chain sustainability at 29%, with Sweden close behind in both. Finland takes the lead in general supply chain sustainability at 29%, with a modest average total score of 21%, and Norway is left far behind with a total score of 16%, represented by only one company, though. Although we came across other Norwegian-listed companies that use considerable amounts of steel in our market analysis, we did not feel comfortable with including companies that service the oil and gas industry, as we find it problematic from a strong and holistic sustainability perspective to include companies whose entire business model is unsustainable from a climate perspective. We were therefore left with just one company, the construction and infrastructure company Veidekke. SKF was a surprise leader because it represents the machinery sector that has not been assessed to be as potential for lead market generation for fossil-free steel as, for instance, the automotive sector. Another top performer is Swedish Lindab, also a machinery company, and the smallest company by revenue, proving that size is not the only factor for companies determined to use supply chain levers to decarbonize their steel value chains. We were glad to see machinery companies do well, as the reasoning behind including the sector in the analysis was that it uses considerable amounts of steel and thus needs to address its steel supply chains to achieve its sustainability goals. Also, including the renewable energy sector that, according to Agora Industries analysis, is one of the emerging sectors for lead market creation for green steel, proved to be a valid choice in the light of the Danish renewable energy developers Vestas and Ørsted's results. The results show that also other sectors than the automotive industry can drive lead markets for green steel. Despite the high expectations, the sectors most prominent for lead market creation for fossil-free steel performed disappointingly poorly. The worst performers included all three construction and infrastructure companies, Finnish YIT and Norwegian Veidekke at total scores of 16% and Swedish Skanska at only 13%. The Danish global shipping and logistics company Maersk landed at second worst performance, also with a 16% total score. The automakers included in our analysis are both manufacturers of heavy vehicles, but we nevertheless expected a notch better total scores from them than Volvo Group's 27% and Scania's 23%. The only consumer-facing company on the scoreboard, Swedish home appliance giant Electrolux's performance was a disappointment too, indicating that we as consumers have not yet utilized our power to demand clean and decarbonized materials in home appliances, despite the negligible price difference. The steel industry is a heavy source of air pollution, causing serious health issues to communities close to coal-based iron and steel-making plants, and a heavy user of water as well. Despite this, none of the companies analyzed in the Sustainable Steel Scoreboard report other significant emissions than greenhouse gases or water usage in their supply chains. This, in our opinion, casts doubt on the quality of these companies' double materiality assessments, as we would expect these topics to be material for most of them given their considerable steel usage and consequently be reported. Back in the day, getting quality data and reporting Scope 3 greenhouse gas emissions was a challenge, but today common practice. And we will keep requiring air pollution and water usage disclosures based on the same logic, expecting that the significance of these issues passes the materiality thresholds of steel procuring companies in the future. This year, a new section was added in the report, the Best Practices Summary. It looks at the best practices already in place among the companies assessed, and a summary score is calculated of these best practices to show what would be reachable if they were adopted among all 15 companies. By adopting the best practices already in use, demand for fossil-free steel could triple. Compared to the average total score of 25%, a considerably higher score of 64% could be reached if best practices were adopted more widely, and an even higher score, 83%, would be within reach in the steel supply chain sustainability category. Reaching 100% in steel supply chain sustainability would mean, for example, disaggregating greenhouse gas emissions due to steel in supply chains, a full commitment to procuring near-zero emission steel by 2040, and disclosing progress towards fulfilling this commitment, as well as participating in multi-stakeholder procurement initiatives, all criteria which at least one of the 15 companies assessed fulfill. Here's a comparison of the average scores and best practices scores across both the general and steel supply chain sustainability categories, and all three subcategories across them. As you can see, the differences between the scores are considerable for most of them. Then some highlights of the best practices. Danish Ørsted is showing the way in setting targets for the procurement of lower emission and fossil-free steel, as well as in using supply chain levers through its commitments as both a Steel Zero and First Movers Coalition member. This is an important milestone as none of the electric vehicle companies assessed in the Lead the Charge Network's leaderboard has such an ambitious target either. The Swedish SKF is the only company on the scoreboard that is a responsible steel member, also engaging with steel suppliers on responsible steel certification. Buyers need to start demanding certification from steelmakers because it helps them identify and define what clean and green steel actually is. Swedish companies lead in entering into offtake agreements with steelmakers developing breakthrough technology for near-zero emission steelmaking. One natural reason for this is that both Stegra and SSAB are developing green hydrogen direct reduced iron making combined with electric arc furnace steelmaking in Sweden, but it should not be impossible for steel buyers in the other Nordic countries to also make offtake agreements with these steelmakers. Even if Nordic steel procuring companies are making progress, there is still room for improvement, as even the best total score is just below 50%, not even halfway there. It is encouraging, nevertheless, that by adopting best practices already in use among the analyzed companies, demand for fossil-free and environmentally sustainable steel could more than triple. Through our recommendations for steel buyers, we demand action, but also words, in the form of transparent and sufficient reporting regarding steel buyers' supply chains. It is a fact that companies need to measure and collect data on environmental impacts in their supply chains in order to be able to manage and decrease their impact. Target setting and disclosures on progress towards those targets is important to see that the companies are moving in the right direction. Suppliers need to be both incentivized and controlled, and emission reduction targets, preferably science-based targets, should be integrated in procurement decision-making and supplier selection, in addition to other environmental criteria. Targets on both the use of fossil-free primary and recycled secondary steel are needed to communicate demand signals to the market. Cooperation through buyer initiatives such as Steel Zero and First Movers Coalition, as well as standardization initiatives such as SBTi and Responsible Steel, are important for spreading best practices, signaling what buyers accept as green and clean steel, for aggregating demand and communicating willingness to buy fossil-free steel. Designing for circularity is crucial to save natural resources and finding more sustainable alternatives for steel as well. Finally, resource efficiency is of utmost importance. Using less steel is naturally the best alternative. We have also created a set of recommendations for institutional investors that are invested in steel-intensive companies, such as the 15 Nordic companies assessed in our analysis. We recommend demanding transparent disclosure of not only greenhouse gas emissions, but also air pollution, water use, as well as deforestation and conversion of natural ecosystems, and not only in the company's own operations, but also across their supply chains, and setting science-based targets on the aforementioned environmental issues. We also ask institutional investors to support steel buyers in making time-bound commitments, for instance, along the lines of Steel Zero, to buy 50% lower emission steel by 2030 and 100% fossil-free steel by 2040 or latest by 2050. Finally, utilize the best practices summary to demand steel-intensive companies to adopt the best practices already in place in other similar companies. Thank you for your attention. Please scan the QR code on the slide to go to our website to download the report, as well as to familiarize yourself closer with the methodology and the detailed scoring of the companies, including motivations and sources for the scoring. Thank you.
Thank you, Ninni. That was really interesting. I would just like to add to that there are several civil society organizations advocating for lead markets creation in fossil-free steel through influencing the automotive industry. But to our knowledge, our multi-sector approach is quite unique here at Just Shift. Therefore, we would be more than happy to partner with other organizations interested in working with the demand for fossil-free steel to accelerate the shift from dirty coal-based iron and steel making to environmentally sustainable and fossil-free steel. Okay, Jonas, do we have any questions?
We have a question from Carlotta Bautista from Beyond Fossil Fuels, if I read the BFF right. The question is, in your conversations with corporates, what are the bottlenecks that they are telling you on why they cannot fulfill these recommendations just yet? Or overall, what's their impression on these recommendations?
Thanks, Carlotta, for the question. Well, the main bottlenecks are availability and price, I would say, and maybe even in the other way around, especially for fossil-free steel. Of course, it is not readily available in the market yet, except for secondary steel made in electric arc furnaces made of scrap, but the green hydrogen direct reduced iron plus steel making in EAFs is still in development, and that's one, of course, an important bottleneck. And the price is next. There is a considerable green premium still for near zero emission steel, and that is what companies cite as a major bottleneck. What was the second part of the question? Sorry.
The second part is what impression the companies have of the recommendations we give them.
Thank you. Well, we have very good discussions with the 10 companies that we actually have been able to engage with, and well, especially the 5 companies that have been with us all the way for already the 4th year going. They are very interested. They always get new ideas from our discussions and things that they could develop. So I think we have a very good and open discussion with all of the companies that we have been able to engage with. And we, of course, would like to engage also with the 5 that didn't review the results with us this time around. And but it is a very They take the recommendations seriously, but of course, these companies are from very different sectors, so it's not as easy for all of them to actually grab these recommendations and also to copy the best practices. It's not possible from sector to sector to go straight forward and just copy the best practices. But still, having said that, most of these recommendations are on such a general level that it should not be impossible to actually make commitments and set targets and things like that, because many of our recommendations are forward-looking. But of course, it is also based, the analysis is based on public reporting, and you can't put everything you do in an annual and sustainability report, and we understand that. So there is a lot of things that we hear and we discuss in our meetings one-on-one, but that never ends up in annual reports, and that's of course one kind of a nuisance or a thing that creates harm, because companies do a lot more than they actually report about.